We'll learn the Mishnayos and Pede Gimel and Baba Kama. We're doing today Mishnah Zayin, Leilu Nishmas, Levi Yitzchok ben Rav Chaim Tzvi, who was a dedicated, successful shliach who was taken away in the prime of his life. And this is learned Leilu Nishmasei, Tei Nishmasei Tzrura B'Tzrei Rachaim. Let's see if anybody's coming on. Starting at 9 exactly. So we're doing Mishnah Zayin. So the Mishnah Hamevakeya, one who is breaking up wood. The Bartanura says Hamevakeya Eitzim. He's breaking up, splitting up wood, a big chunk of a clunk of wood. He breaks it up, and what happens when you chop wood? Sometimes pieces fall and they fly, but he's doing it in his own backyard, in his own property, B'reshus HaYochid. As the Bartanura says, B'reshus HaYochid Shaloi, this is in his own private domain. He's doing it in his backyard. But he's chopping it in the backyard, but v'hizik B'reshus HaYochid, B'reshus HaRabim, but it flew out from the Reshus HaRabim to the Reshus HaRabim, and it damaged somebody in the public domain. So he's responsible in that case. It's obviously that he's responsible because you should not just chop wood. You have to be careful. You know that people are walking in the Reshus HaRabim. But we'll see, even in other cases, you're always going to be responsible. Then what is the din if you were chopping the wood in the Reshus HaRabim? And in Reshus HaRabim, you don't really have a right to chop wood. In the Reshus HaRabim, uh, you are more responsible. And then if you're going in the public domain, you're splitting woods over there. And then v'hizik b'reshus hayochid, and it goes into somebody else's private property, and you do damage over there. So you'll have to pay too. So the first two cases, it was in the first case, he did it in his private property and it went out to the public domain. Over there, we can say easily, you have to be careful. And if you did it in the public domain and it flies into the private domain of other people, you shouldn't be banging in the Reshus HaRabim, and you should be careful, shouldn't fly anywhere. But here is the biggest chiddush. B'reshus hayochid v'hizik b'reshus hayochid achar. Even if you're doing it in your property and it flew out from your property and it does damage in another person's Reshus hayochid, still you're going to be chayiv. You're going to be chayiv. And the chiddush is here. I didn't have to expect mele if I heard somebody in the Reshus HaRabim. So over there, people are always going. So if you're splitting wood, be careful; it doesn't fly anywhere. But in private properties, just happened to be somebody there that when I'm going to chop the wood, I wasn't careful. You're still going to be chayiv. Let's look in the Bartanura. Chayiv. Even though he was splitting the wood in his own property. And veloish krichi rabim shom, and it's not common for many to be in the other Reshus HaYochid. So we have two things here. First of all, he's doing it in his own property. That takes away, therefore it's a bigger chiddush than the second case, B'reshus HaRabim, v'hizik B'reshus HaYochid. Over there, it's not his reshus; he doesn't have a right to do that. But if it's his own reshus hayochid, he has a right to do that. And on top of that, in the other reshus hayochid, there is not so many common there. The name Yuna, so that we can argue. We should have looked, and when you're chopping the wood, should have looked that nobody's there, but it didn't expect anybody. So therefore, afilu hochi chayiv, you're still chayiv. So basically, the Mishnah tells us in all cases, even if you would chop it in your own property, which you have a right to chop there, and even if it falls in not in the public, but it falls into a private property where there's not common for people to be there. I guess the damage that he did was to a person, not as opposed to damaging, let's say, something else of the person, like breaking a barrel or in the other one's property. Over there, we don't have to. There, the logic of l'shkichet rabim wouldn't apply. But still, in all cases, the Mishnah rules that you are chayiv.
But that
Yeah.
this is mishum isha, mishum chitza mishum isha. We're saying this is hevel.
Either way, I guess we have to look at the
It's a
Gemara.
din of Eish, right?
Yeah, we have to look at the Gemara. But what either Isha Mishum Chitza, either Mishum.
So here it's chitza mishum
Almost
isha.
like a straightest of an Odom, versus an animal. Yeah.
No, but in other words, the chayru we're talking. It's like isha. In other words, the chayru, right?
Yeah.
In other words, even though he's madlik birshus, but if it could go in ruach mitzuya will carry away the fire.
I think this is more. Again, I think this is more because in this case you're directly throwing by the Eish Motzu Koitzim. Over there, we're still saying is Mishum Chitzoi or Mishum Amoinoi over there because technically the fire went on its own. Here it's flying directly from your Hezek, your Mazik. By Tzroidus, we say Chatzi Nezek Tzroidus Aloch L'Moshe Sinai because it's logically, if it's Derech Hilucha, and the animal pushes something flies, it should pay nezek sholem unless without the halacha l'moshe Sinai that it's chatzin nezek. In this case, though, I mean the person is actually. How is this different when a person would throw a rock? In this case, he's throwing a wood, but he didn't mean to throw the wood. He meant to chop the wood. He wasn't intending, but that would still be Odom Muad La'ilam. So l'chayra, I'm not sure if we need to apply the idea of Isha Mishum Chitzah Mishum Amayna. What did the Mefarshim say? You're looking in?
I just have kahati. He doesn't say what it is, but I'm thinking it's. But also just to point out that if he kills somebody, so then he'll go to Golos. That's the first.
Isn't that the case where the Torah talks about over there? The Torah talks about killing somebody accidentally, and that will be when you're chopping wood, right?
Yeah.
And then it flies off and
yeah.
somebody. It's not over there now. Over there, also the chiyuvim are more direct than mishum chitzoy or mishum amoinoi. Over there, it's not because you own that ox or something like that. Over there is because you're directly responsible, I think. All right, we'll go by to this whole thing's.
Just to say that your screen is showing up as black. I don't know.
Oh, really? No, tell me that. That's important. Hold on a second. Let me see what the reason is. Why is my screen black? Hold on. So you're not seeing. Hold on. Okay, now you don't see anything. Now when I do this, let's see. Can you see now? Still not?
Now is good.
Now is good?
Yeah.
Okay. Zog the Mishnah weiter, Mishnah ches. Shnei shvarim tamim shechavlu zeh. So you have two oxen. They're both tamim, meaning they haven't been warned yet 3 times that they wounded, they gored each other or they wounded each other. They had a fight, 2 oxen. But then there were damages to both oxen. So what do we do?
But it's Keren. We're talking about Keren over here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on because the only time there is a difference between a nezek sholem and a chatzi nezek is when we're talking about keren. The other places pay a nezek sholem the first time, but this is unusual, so it's not expected. They're both a tam, and they only pay a half a nezek. A tam pays a half a nezek. So in this case, they wounded. So there was damages here. So let's say one ox was damaged $100 and the other ox was damaged $50. So the difference between the damages is $50, right? Because the other one also had damage. So technically, this one has to pay that. They have to pay each other for the damages. So what happens here, the way we figure this is Mishalmin b'moisar chatzi nezek. So first you see how much the one who has the greater damage, that is the damage. So one suffered $50, the other suffered 100. So there's $50 worth of damage to the one who got more damaged. And that damage is split in two so that the one he only pays 25 of the damage. Mishalmin b'moiser, what the additional damage that was done to the ox that had additional damage. So you pay in the extra, you pay a chatzi nezek. You pay only a half of a nezek.
But we have to say that Chatzi Nezek can be Gufa. He doesn't say it in the Mishnah, but L'chara, that's Pashut.
Yeah, that's correct. But the whole thing of Megufe we'll have to speak about later on in the Mishnah. We'll talk about more details in the next parak also. Also, the next Mishnah is down, a little further down. B'moiser chatzi nezek, zog the Bartanura, shomin ma hezeka shel zeh yoser al nishkul shel zeh. We evaluate how much this damage is more than the other one. And then, ubeoiser moiser mishalem mishe hezik yoser esachetzi. So whatever is left over, they damaged each other. So whatever more damage is to one animal over the other animal, you take that amount of money is the damage. The damage is the extra. And that extra, you pay 50% of it. That is the din of the tamid. What happens in a case if Shneihem Mu'odim? They are both been warned. Now the Mu'ad pays. These oxen were gorers and they have been warned 3 times. So now the payment that they pay is a full payment. So what happens? So let's say one ox had sustained damages for $100 and the other one sustained damages for $50. So we say the damage here is $50 because that's the extra. So that extra is paid in full because by the one who sustained the bigger damage because they're mu'adim and a mu'ad pays full. Mishalmin b'moiser nezek sholem. So whatever is more than the damage than each other, that gets wiped away. The extra damage, you have to pay a nezek sholem because he's a mu'ad. What happens? The oxen that were fighting, echad tam, ve'echad mu'ad. One was a tam and one was a mu'ad, meaning so one needs to pay half of the damages, and the other one has to pay the full damages if they just did damages. So in this case, they did damage to each other. So it depends. So mu'ad bitam. In other words, if the mu'ad damaged is the one that damaged more than the tam. So in the case that we said 150. So if the damage to the tam was greater, the muad damaged the tam, and he has 50%, $50 of damage that ox that is a tam had to. So then mishalim b'moiser, so this extra 50 that he damaged the tam, the muad damaged the tam, nezek sholim, the extra, he pays him the full amount because he's a muad again. But what happens Rashi, muad betam mishalem b'moiser, meaning, kloimer, to say, im hu hizik es hatam, yoiser mimashe hezikei tam, if he, the muad, damaged the tam more than what the tam damaged the muad, so it turns out that the extra payment is for the tam. And since he was damaged by a muad, he has to pay that extra payment. But what happens if it was tom b'muad, that the extra damage was done from the tam to the muad? So then, mashalim b'moiser, so it means that the muad sustained the bigger damages. Mishalim b'moiser chatzi nezek. So then, in the extra damage, the damage that we calculate here, which is the extra besides what they equal out what they did to each other, that extra damage, he's going to pay a chatzi nezek because a tam only pays a half a nezek. And same thing says the Mishnah is v'chein shnei
Just to
anoshim.
bring out, it's a shtickle interesting because he says muad b'tam, mishalim b'moisa nezik shalim. So why does the Bartanura have to say im hizik as a tam yoiser mimash hizik etam? Even if they would have just damaged each other the same. Let's say they were each worth 100, and they each damaged each other 50. But the tam only has to pay 25.
If
The
they
the muad has to pay 50. So l'chayra, the muad would still pay the tam at 25. They did the same amount of damage.
well, but you saw that's the whole idea. It looks like the whole idea of Mishalmi B'Moiser, that the damage that we consider here is the extra damage. You don't start payment. You don't start payment. You don't calculate payment uh, only on what's extra. When they hurt each other, that's not considered the damage that we're considering over here. That's the whole, I think, the whole idea of this Mishnah. That is Mishalmin B'Moiseh. The Nezek is not considered a Nezek before the extra. It's only uh, as the Bartanura said before, Shomim Mahezeka Shel Yoser Anesker, Uba Moiser Mishalim Misha Hizik Yoser Esachetzi. It's always in the Oyser Moiser because your question, Mamison, would not be only in this case, would be in the first case of the Mishnah as well. So it's not only in Oyser Moiser, you saying that he should also pay in the other in the equal part, we should also
So
pay
the
less as
equal
a half.
part, the equal part cancels each other. So two
No, why should? But if he's a Tom, no, okay. So by
tamim,
Tom, if it doesn't make a difference,
so that's the first case. Two
but
tamim,
a Tom, yeah.
they damage each other. So unless the damage was one greater than the other, otherwise it
Okay,
cancels.
so I'm not sure you can learn it, but it certainly seems clear from the Mishnah, unless
Yeah,
Gemara says other,
yeah.
that you don't consider the damages what they are only in the Bamoiser becomes the damage. It's a very good point, but it seems that that is what's going to be considered the damages. The damages are only that which is left over between them. So that is called the damage here. Whatever they damage equally to each other, the same amount, that's just cancels itself out. That's what it seems like. V'chein shnei anoshim. Unless the Mefarshim say from the Gemara differently, but I'm saying the Pashtus in the Mishnah. V'chein shnei anoshim shechavlu zeh b'zeh. Same thing as two people who wounded each other, and each one sustained damages. Mishalmin b'moiser nezek sholem. So the extra they pay a full nezek. Now, here, the Chiddush will be in the last case. So, Odom b'muad, umuad b'odom. So, the first case is two people. Now we're talking about a person and an ox or an animal. But the animal is a muad.
Just to say on that previous point, I see that there's a machlokes of the different Mefarsha Mishnah. There's how the Rosh explains the Mishnah and how the Rambam explains the Mishnah.
Okay, so that could be two possibilities. Okay,
Yeah, so this
good.
is like seems like the rush. Yeah.
Okay. Adam b'muad, the muad be'adam. Same thing. The person damages the muad, or the muad damages the person. They're both pay. Each one is responsible 100%. So mishalem b'moiser. So whatever's left over, you pay nezek sholem, the first one. Now here we have adam betam be'adam. So if whether the uh, person is the one that has exceedingly uh, more in the tam, or the tam, uh, in both cases. So what happens? So the Mishnah says, what happens? The case was an Adam was fighting with the tam, did damage to the tam, or the tam did damage of the Adam. So what happens in that case? Adam betam, in the first case, where the person, it's surprising why the Mishnah has to start off Adam betam betam be'odom, and then it can go straight to the cases. Adam betam mishalem b'moisen ezek sholem. So the person who damages the tam, he pays the extra damages also on ezek sholem. You have the same question by an Adam too.
Because the no, because the Adam is Muad Laila. So,
Correct. Right. Right.
but it's a
In the
machlekes.
Adam betam mishalem moisen, the Adam mud loylam. Tom Adam mishalem b'moisen chatzi nezek. Again, also on the moiser, the same issue like you had before, that you pay in what's extra. Let's see.
Why is he fighting with the animal? He got sick and tired of fighting with his wife?
Adam betam mishalem b'moiser nezek sholem zek Rashi, the Adam mud loylam. So you have to pay a full thing. But Tom Adam mishalem b'moiser chatzi nezek. Betam Adam mishalem b'moiser chatzi nezek. So here we have a machloikis. A tam that gores an ox pays a half of damages. But whether a tam gores a person, does he also pay half a nezek? That's a machloikis, that's what we're learning now, because it depends what the pasuk means. Because when the pasuk says that the ox gores a man, it says you do the same halacha. The question is, what does it mean in the pasuk? The same halacha. The same halacha, like that there is a difference between a tam and a muad. The same halacha applies to the animal goring a person, that he would also pay only a half a nezek. Or that case is talking about a muad, so the same halacha means it's always going to be a muad. Let's look in the Bartanura. The tom b'mu adam mishal b'moiser chatzin nezek. The ksiv, the pasuk says like this: Oy ben yigach, oy bas yigach. If the ox gores a boy or a girl, kamishpat hazeh yasolo, you has the same law. So what is the law? So what is the same law? So we touch it. This is the Tanakama. Kamishpat shoyer b'shoyer kach mishpat shoyer b'odom. The same law, kamishpat hazeh, just like the law of the ox with the ox. Same thing is the ox with the odom. Ma shoyer b'shoyer, just like an ox with an ox. Tam mishalem chatzin nezek, umuad mishalem nezek shalom. That the ox pays a half a nezek and the mud pays a full nezek. Afsher ba'odom, the same thing is the ox by the person. Tam mishalem chatzin nezek, umud mishalem nezek shalom. The mud pays a complete nezek. But Rabbi Akiva Imer, so he basically says they have the same laws. There's a difference tam and mud by an ox, and there's a difference with tam and mud by odom. But Rabbi Akiva disagrees. He says by an odom there is no tam of mud. He says, "Af tam shechabal ba'odom mishalem ba'moiser nezek sholem." Even a tam who wounded a person pays in the extra pays a full nezek. And Rabbi Nur explains. He said, "Rabbi Kiva Eimer af tam shechavel ba'odom mishalem b'moiser nezek sholem." He holds that a tam, if he gores a person, pays a full nezek. The Dorish kamishpat hazeh. He says, like the law, ben yigach bas yigach kamishpat hazeh, lidila the solik haikromene. That's the halacha in that pasuk that we're talking about. The b'sher muad made. So it says kamishpat hazeh, meaning he should always be a muad. There's no tam by another. V'hochi kamer kro, kamishpat al zeh sheshir muad shemishalim nezek sholem. Just like the law of the ox muad that he pays and nezek sholem, ya'aseh loy l'chol sher shenok chodem. That's what we do for every ox that gores a person. V'afilu hu sher tam, even it's a sher tam. Vein aloche ke Rabbi Akiva, loch is like Rabbi Akiva, but the tam that
Is Thomas like
cores
this?
a bird is
Is
also a
Thomas-
difference between a tam and a muad by another. Yeah, what'd you say?
But I realized no, I didn't remember the halacha that the behema is considered a tam even legabe adam. Shkoyach, I feel like
Machlokes. There's a
here,
machlokes.
beautiful.
Okay. Yeshikoyach. Kol tov. Thank you for joining.
I do. You want to say something else? What asking?
I want to say from the Rebbe's letter, we learned it because we're learning Lila Nishmas Levi, and we learned some powerful stuff that the Rebbe was talking about, how one is to be successful by realizing that you are able to overcome. There was a certain person that was complaining that he doesn't feel like he could be so successful, and the Rebbe says to him that the success, the nefesh alikis is always with Hashem. It's only sometimes the nefesh abahamis. And when you want and you overcome, then you are able to be successful. There's no such a thing you can't be successful. And I think that Levi was a prime example of being able to accomplish so many things. People didn't think that he has.
Mimi's listening.
What?
Mimi's listening to you.
Okay, so we didn't think that.
Wait a second. I'm putting Mendy's gonna listen too. Hold on.
What?
Call it. Hello, Sashi should listen.
What?
Who?
Sashi.
Sashi. Why Sashi?
Okay, why?
I'm saying you gotta call the whole mishpacha. What?
Hold on.
Rifki's making a joke. Just making a joke. You're a shviger. You gotta get your daughter-in-law involved.
You gotta rub it in. You gotta rub it in.
Hey, Mandy, good to see you.
It's a-
I hope this is the end of the recording. This is not. Oh, it's still recording, Shrev.